Don't say anything too unsavory.
Like we ever do.
That's.
Okay. We would like to welcome everyone. We will work you, but
Welcome everyone to the October 2, 2024 Planning Commission work session. We have a quorum and we really have like just one major item to take care of in terms of work, and then the process of electing a new chair and a vice chair. So we'll take care of that when we get to that. Do we want to, I'm trying to remember how we've done that in the past.
Yeah. So you will need to vote on it in the actual business meeting, so that's when it's scheduled. You can
Okay.
talk about it in here if you'd
Okay.
like and have discussion. And then you'll just save your actual motions and votes until that item in the business meeting.
Is there anybody that has no interest in running for either chair or vice chair? Besides, I will let somebody else take a turn, so.
Very little interest.
Very little interest.
We say no.
I'm
interest.
willing.
Yeah.
It does, go ahead.
Okay, you have no interest.
Well, I'll pipe up and say I have interest.
Dangerous.
Okay.
Well, actually, I have a little dangerous. That's good.
I'll pipe up and say I have interest.
You have interest?
Yeah.
We have a winner.
Okay, all right. Okay,
There you go.
I would say this just, and I think some of those who've been involved with this kind of stuff before, we are a pretty collaborative body, so it's not, I mean, I hope it hasn't been like this with me as chair, but it's not so much wielding things with an iron fist, it's more facilitating our communication with each other. And at the end of the day, as chair, you almost have to sit back a little bit more, and your job is to facilitate more than it is to express. So I mean, it's just, there's sometimes more power in being a member of the deliberative body than being the chair, so within reason. So all that being said, that's fantastic. Thank you for being willing. So is there anybody else who would like to provide another alternative? Are we comfortable with that?
Comfortable with that.
Okay, and then is somebody interested in vice chair? Anyone?
I think Sean or Mike.
Sean.
Yeah, Sean, are you ever taking a turn?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with vice chair.
Awesome, because I mean, they're inevitably with travel, after having done it for a year plus, there will be times that we will need you to jump in, so. Awesome, okay, we'll do that more formally when we get into, so just for the rest of us, we'll need to nominate them, and they can nominate themselves, but I mean, we'll be a little more formal about it, so. With that, we do have one business item to review, so we'll now turn the time over to staff to get us up to speed here.
Hey, thank you. I will just connect my computer real quick. I think your audio is on. I don't know if that'll create any.
I didn't join the audio.
Okay, yeah, you're fine. I just didn't see the,
Yeah, I just didn't join it, so it's not even connected.
okay. Okay, Alex, is my screen showing up all right on there? Okay. Okay, so this is just the one item we have today. It's a subdivision amendment. For the Erhan subdivision, which is actually located just 2 or 3 lots to the north of us here on City Hall. To give some context. Super close to us, that's kind of the satellite image there. It's just right off 23rd East, right next to the Butler Hills View subdivision that was recently approved a few years ago. The applicant is Roger and Diane Erhan. I think their father's the namesake of the subdivision. It's just a 2-lot subdivision with 1 duplex for each lot. Those are called 2-family dwellings in our code, so you'll see that wording in the staff report and in this presentation as well. But there's 2 units to each lot because the duplex isn't separated as a condo or a unit or like a division or anything, which is the reason why they wanted to apply for this, was to divide those up so the ownership could be separate. Our recommendation is to approve, but I'll go into some details for the application now that will elaborate on that. So just for some zoning context, the properties are zoned R28 multifamily. That allows for a 2-family dwelling per property in this zone. So that's what they are now. There's in total about 0.41 acres between the 2 properties. And you can see the surrounding zoning is a mixture of multifamily and that single-family zoning. And it's pretty close to public facility zoning at our City Hall here. So Their request, to put it simply, is to divide the two family dwellings into condominium units. And then create a common area out of the existing yard and driveway space. They're not proposing any new development or site alterations.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Question now. So explain to me, so right now it's a duplex, correct? That's what it's called. And what is the distinction between calling it for this purpose? I mean, I know what the difference is between a condo and a duplex, but for this purpose, why?
So a condo might be better to explain this, but the condominium would be individual units within the buildings would be separated as their own lots or parcels.
Yeah.
And be able to be owned independently.
And why can't that happen now?
Because the two units exist on one lot. There's no division in those units. So we can only have
so
one owner per
one-
lot. Yeah.
But there can be a different family in
Yeah,
each.
so how it's set up
one.
right now is you could,
But they couldn't own.
you purchase
But no one
the
has,
front
okay.
lot, you own 2 units. You could rent one of those units out to a separate family, but you couldn't sell that unit to the second family
Got it. Okay. that's
without
what-
condominiumizing the
Got it.
actual
Okay.
path of the building.
Do you know, are these separate metered currently?
I don't know. I might guess that they are, but the applicant might be able to speak to that.
Okay.
They're planning on attending virtually the business session. We've given them information to join via Zoom, so that might be a question for
And
them.
then firewall aspect, do you know kind of what rating on the firewall between the two units?
I don't have. that
Currently,
information,
no,
but
the technical review will run through utilities, will run through the building department as well.
Okay.
yeah,
To make sure they're looking at that kind of thing, because there is that fire separation standard. Typically, that standard applies whether, if I'm remembering correctly, whether it's condominiumized or not.
For
It's
different living
dwelling
units.
units physically separated, so the building
Yeah.
code requirement shouldn't be much different.
There was issues on some of the townhome duplex builds
Mhm.
that they share attics. So if a
Mhm.
fire starts in one building, it goes up and over.
Yeah.
A building down in Murray, actually, I think it was like 3 buildings just about 5 years ago burned down because of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just something to be conscious of.
So, yeah, so this would go through the plat process, even though it's not creating any new lots or buildings, it still goes through that preliminary plat process, which gets sent through all the, utility review and building and zoning and fire, and everybody will look at this.
Are they gonna require an HOA for these as well, just to maintain roof and landscaping and integrity of the build?
Sort of, you'll see kind of the way, as Ian continues on, the way to make this code compliant is gonna require the units and some additional common space, so they'll need some mechanism to maintain that common space on the lots.
whether it's just an agreement between two units or an HOA, it's kind of up to them, but. This is the current layout of the subdivision. You can see there's 2 lots. The rear lot is a flag lot. It's larger. The front lot is 8,000 square feet. This kind of shows roughly an overlay of where the property lines are now on those duplexes. So you can see it's kind of divided right down the middle and the driveway. So what the applicant applied for was to split the buildings up into 4 individual units that follow the footprint of the units within the buildings. The yard area would become a common area, and any proposed PUB modification would require approval from the utilities prior to final plat recordation. So that's something that we would look at in our review. We didn't find substantial issues with the proposed plat amendment. However, their proposal to create one single common area for all 4 units does conflict with the underlying zoning, which allows 2 units per property. This would make 4 units per property. So as such, we're requiring the applicant to update the plat to show 2 distinct common area parcels while still showing each 2-family dwelling divided into separate condominium units. So roughly that would look like this. They would just have the current lot lines there, splitting the common area into 2 different parts, and then the units would still be condominiumized. Do you have any questions about that?
So Ian, does that mean that the drive, because the drive comes across the front, right?
Mhm.
So, and I see that they're saying access easement, so that in essence puts unit 1 and 2 in primary responsibility for those. And they'll work out some agreement if they want in terms of how that, is that the idea?
Yeah, and that's how it is
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
That's an
Okay.
easement to preserve access to those back lots.
Great.
Yep.
There's a part of me that's like, are we creating a flag lot? Are we solving the
No.
problem? And I
Yeah.
really want to help this family. I mean, I see the intention. It's literally like 2 successors that want to manage the asset maybe slightly differently one to another, which I think is fair and legal, and my property right side is like, yeah, that we should facilitate this and just protect both property owners, you know.
So essentially our recommendation, they proposed one lot with all 4 units on it, doesn't work per code. So we've just recommended, hey, just put the parcel lines back how they are today. So functionally, all they're doing is adding a line, they're adding a footprint on their plat and a line down the middle of the building.
I think my main concern with this is maintenance, common maintenance, exterior maintenance. There's an economies of scale when you own, so one individual owns those buildings. Or just one building or the other building, they're going to maintain that in completion, where with this, there's not an HOA that's going to be managing it. I know that some other communities have kind of minimum requirements as far as size of condo conversions, which I would consider this condo conversion. Do we have a condo conversion code in Townwood Heights?
No, nothing clear, nothing that dictates, size requirements or anything like that.
Yeah, because I do know that there's in Mill Creek and Salt Lake and North Salt Lake, there's minimum requirements just so that you can get some of the economies in place. Where with this, it's kind of handshake agreements with the 2 folks of each condo. And condo's much different than like a townhome because of the nature of the fee simple. It's actually a clear delineation of parcels, where this would be 2 separate parcels with 2 condos inside. That's my only hesitation with it, is the maintenance and the deferred maintenance and who's actually going to be responsible for that. And I know those other cities do require HOAs. And of course, I don't want to compare us to any other cities, but we might want to look at kind of a condo code and minimum requirements in that space.
I think it's reasonable. We have in other private developments we haven't mandated, hey, have an HOA, but we've asked for copies of their maintenance agreements. And how they're gonna, do trash removal and, driveway cleanup for snow and, things like that.
Right.
I think it's reasonable to ask for that here. Just whatever they're planning on, just show that they have a plan and we'll make sure we have that.
Can we require like a reserve allocation for that as well?
I don't think you can.
Okay,
No.
and that's where the HOA is allowed to do so,
Yeah,
where let's just say they sell 2 units. That unit's going to then infuse, $1,000 into reserve just for roof maintenance and insurance and all that kind of stuff. So just some things to consider.
that's a good point. And I think what we can do is ask for just their plan, a maintenance plan and agreement. We'll have that on file.
Have we done condo conversions like this in the city before?
It's been a while, right?
Yeah, we do it a lot for office buildings, and commercial buildings. We've done a few of these. In a lot of cases, I think there was one that looked like this and they actually wanted to create separate parcels. They had common ownership and they kind of went the reverse direction. And we see some where they're splitting the property down the middle, front to back through the building, which is not allowed in this case because of the flag lot. That would prohibit that.
Stacked multiple flag lots in the back, which isn't allowed.
Yeah,
So I think we've done it a few times. It's not been a common thing, but we don't have a lot of situations like this in the city.
I think it's incredibly advantageous to create more housing stock. I just have seen issues with this when you have 4 separate owners in a condo space that's not a fee simple townhome ownership, where let's just say owner number 1 and owner number 2 have a roof issue. Owner number 1 can't afford the roof issue. Owner number 2 can afford half of the roof issue. How do we manage that? And then you have 2 separate shingle marks and, this is thinking 20 years down the road, but you've seen a lot of this stuff happen in other communities that, the deferred maintenance comes into place. Like I said, I love the housing stock, but you want to get economies of scale for condo conversions for the most part.
Sure.
So
When were these units built?
I think that the original plat was done in 2002 or 2001. So I think it predated the city's incorporation. I don't know about the construction of the buildings though.
I can check. Like 2004.
Yeah, I think if we could figure out if there's separate meters for water, sewer, or I guess not sewer, but separate meters for water, electrical. A clear delineation for firewall, which I think is in the engineering report.
And you mean between units, not between, because there will be separate meters for the two parcels already.
Yeah, I think-
mean,
I think we should make sure that there's separate units for, or separate meters for both.
Mhm.
And then fire separation to,
Yeah.
you know, international building code,
yeah, they'll have to do
condos.
that regardless. Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't want to perseverate over this, but I do think that when we start talking about how somebody can take something that's a whole and slice up ownership a little bit, that makes things more affordable in our city. And I think we'll probably continue to see variations on the theme of this. So kind of having our version of a playbook and recognizing no two projects are the same. I love it when we have these conversations because I really appreciate Sean shining a light down the road 20 years, because that variability in how owners are gonna behave, it's hard to predict, and I just hate to see a property just get dilapidated and or an uneven level of responsibility between two property owners that are gonna affect each other so closely.
Yeah, and in some of these other cities, they usually have like a requirement of 10 units, just because you get the economies of scale to then create an HOA, to then have the appropriate reserves, to then pay for the insurances, to affect those areas where, you know, condo conversions can only happen with either 10 units or above. You get those economies, and I think there's a reason for it, just so that you don't run into those issues. You know, name a couple cities that don't have that, you know, you go drive by and it looks like two separate houses attached, and, you know, there's not any, you know, CC&Rs to regulate that, and it just, you know, creates a little bit of an issue down the road.
So if they don't want to comply with what you're suggesting, Sean, is that sufficient to reject their request? Is that our role here?
Not
I
really.
don't
There's
Well,
no
I think
code
it's-
mechanism that prohibits this,
Yeah,
and it's a subdivision, so you can't really impose conditions that aren't listed in the ordinance. But we do have precedent of asking for a maintenance plan. And we can even have that recorded on the properties.
Could we have CC&Rs?
I don't know that we can go that far, you know, it can be what's your plan, it's what's your plan for maintenance, it's snow removal and trash pickup and, you know, all these services, we want to make sure they've thought through it.
But encouraging them to do it, I mean, like, you can't
Yeah.
compel them, but to that point, I mean, they're. At this stage, when we've got what it appears to be two family members that I'm assuming are still reasonably collaborative with each other. They're gonna, if they're separating from each other, the ability to teach both of them a little bit of like, hey, we want to save you so that however your deal goes down later on down the road, you don't get yourself into trouble. I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that we're not going to compel them. I mean, I think to your
Yeah.
point, there's nothing in the code, to your point, that says thou shalt, you know.
And is this only doable on subdivisions? Or could you go, you know, find duplex up off of Bengal and
It
do a
has to,
subdivision of that
has to
duplex?
comply with the underlying zoning, so we'd be looking at R2A properties that aren't already separate units, you know, that could go through this process. We
Great.
don't have a ton of these smaller R2A kind of standalone properties in the city. I'm sure there are some others out there.
Yeah.
That I'm not aware of, but yeah.
I think it's great to get more housing stock, that's for sure.
Any more questions before I move on? Okay. So just to kind of summarize here, if this is approved by you guys today, it would undergo a full technical review for compliance. We've already done an initial review and given them staff comments. But we go through that cycle prior to plat approval and recordation. Any technical correction item like the update that requires that division of the common area into two distinct parcels will be identified in the review, and that's been provided to the applicant, so they'll have to make that update before they record. We didn't receive any public comments. I think I got a call, someone asking some clarifying questions, but no public comment or input was received. So we find that the application is code compliant and we recommend approval. We'll wait to do model motions in the business session, but I'll hand the time back over to you.
Okay. With that, I think that's the end of our business for today.
Just a reminder, we've got that joint work session, on the 29th. Saying that right?
You guys
At
gonna
5:30
be
PM.
available for that?
Yep.
I know that many of your council members are really, really, really hoping that they're gonna attend that.
Could you?
You'll be in Hawaii?
If
Oh,
not,
my goodness.
You can do it.
Well, there you go.
Subdivision.
Yeah, I think you'd come back quickly.
From a beach.
Yeah, well, or set up his laptop on his.
That was a new legislation.
Love it.
It's just,
2 years
if they
ago,
meet code, they're approved, and if
Really?
they don't meet
I'll
code.
plan on it.
Okay, so 5 PM on October 29th.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good.
Did you say that? I thought Mike said 5:30.
Did you say
5:30 is what they're thinking.
5:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think I sent out an invite for 5, just for you guys to hold it, but I heard earlier this week, they're looking at 5:30.
And what's the long version of our time frame for that?
Good question.
7
Hopefully
o'clock,
2
8
hours.
o'clock, 9 o'clock?
Yeah, hopefully I would say 8 o'clock.
Okay,
with that.
great, that's safe. Okay. Okay,
And then we have another regular planning.
Yes,
commission in
yeah,
a
there's
couple of
another
weeks.
meeting in 2 weeks. Tentatively on that will be the Canyon Center development. Their proposal to amend one of the entitled office building there into a residential building. That application came in. We're just making sure there's not substantial, completion issues before we notice that, but that should be the item you're looking at.
That Kevin and Chris.
It's a seller, yeah, or a buyer of that building from CW Management, yeah.
perfect. Okay, one more motion.
I move that we adjourn.
We have a motion, you have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourn, say aye.
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 We stand adjourned.